Hi, everybody. Before we get to this interview, I'm so excited. I can't believe who my guest is today. But before we get to that, please do me a favor and subscribe. It would really help us out. Now, let's get to that interview. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Too Opinionated. Look who I'm talking to today. It's Wil Wheaton. Welcome, Wil.
Hello, how are you?
I'm so good. I've been looking forward to this for, I'll say a long time, but definitely for the last week.
Wow, awesome.
Yeah.
A week is an extremely long time, especially if you're like a caterpillar.
I've been described as many things. Caterpillar.
But never as a caterpillar?
That'd be the first.
My wife and I are obsessed with raising monarch butterflies. We live in Southern California, right along their migration from Mexico to Canada. So we have all this milkweed in our yard and just endless monarch caterpillars and chrysalises. One of our friends lives a couple miles from us, and she released over 100 monarch butterflies in the last sort of cycle of hatching. It's a fun, for people who are into this sort of thing, there's like two people in the audience who are like, oh, that's amazing. And everyone else is like, I don't understand why you're so excited about butterflies. But for those two of you, right? It's pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty neat. I don't, are you a Venture Brothers fan?
I'm not, it ticks a ton of boxes for me. But it never managed to land on me in a way that pulled my attention from what I was watching at that time. And I can't remember what that was.
The Monarch is a big part of the show.
Good to know. Well, that just increased Venture Brothers on my I gotta watch it list.
Yeah, that's the main, what you call it, the main villain is the Monarch.
Incredible. Okay.
See, now I've given you a reason to give it another chance.
And if that monarch is if that character actually has monarch wings, I'm such a ridiculous nerd for monarch butterflies. I can identify at a glance if it is a male butterfly or a female butterfly because they have different markings on their wings.
Oh, now I wish I had the picture because now I would really like to know. Did they get it right?
I can honestly say I did not think I'd be having a conversation about monarch butterflies when I signed in today, and I'm finding it quite delightful.
It's pretty nice. So did you plant the milkweed?
I planted an original milkweed, just one small plant in like a little 1-gallon container, and they just produce a zillion seeds. And their seeds are cool. They come out of these like big seed pods, and then they have little fluffs on them so they float away on the air. And all around our property over the last, I'd say probably 3 years, it's just propagated by itself, and there is milkweed everywhere. Like
how do you not mow it?
Well, it's like a big, its name is misleading. It's actually more of a shrub. Its branches are pretty thick and woody. And then it has really long, broad leaves. Here's a fun fact about milkweed. It is extremely toxic to everything except the monarch caterpillar. And the reason the monarch caterpillar lives on this milkweed, and the reason the monarch caterpillar like has evolved to be there, it eats the leaves. It doesn't kill the monarch caterpillar, but it makes them taste terrible to predators. And it can actually kill predators because there's so much of that toxin in its body. And somehow birds tell their young, yo, when you get out and see this caterpillar and you're like, yo, tasty caterpillar, don't do it because it killed your Uncle Harvey, and like you cannot go do that. I could talk about this stuff forever.
Actually, that's actually really interesting. So, all right. So one last question, then we'll move on. But so if everything else, the milkweed is a poison to, does that mean your yard is free of all the other pests?
No, I mean, I have like, I still have to, I release ladybugs and I hatch praying mantises every year in the yard.
Oh my gosh.
because I have a pretty big garden and I grow tomatoes I'm on my like third season of a pepper plant that I planted from some heirloom seeds a few years ago.
Nice.
Yeah, and then we're doing some remodeling in the yard, so like there's going to be some other places there. Anyway, I haven't noticed a problem with unwanted pests. I did have leaf miners one year, but they never came back. It is one of those things that in Southern California, if you have enough of it, you actually can get your yard certified as a wildlife habitat, as a place for like these things to come in and live and breed and thrive.
I'm actually kind of really interested to just walk through your yard.
Well, no matter where you are in North America, there is almost certainly an organization in your local community that collects and will offer for free or at like virtually no cost packages of wildflower seeds that are native to your specific area, because so many things have become kind of like homogenized, and we've spread these kind of like generic species all over the place, and they're gorgeous, but they kind of choke out the natural things that should actually live there that your local wildlife population depends on.
Right.
And it's just it's fun, easy, deeply satisfying conservation.
All right. I have no further questions.
All right, great.
Best interview ever.
Really interesting to look and see like exactly when the fall off began. Like, did they immediately start tuning out, or like did they wait? Did they like, are they really going to talk about this for 10 minutes? I guess they are.
Yeah. They gave us maybe 30 to 45 seconds. And
to everyone who stuck around, I will now endeavor to pay off your learning investment.
That's right. We're now only talking to my mother, but that's okay.
Terrific. I love little intimate conversations.
So I love the fact that you took this book that you had written. It's been almost 20 years since you wrote it the first time, and now you've annotated it. You went back and revisited the book. Yeah, Still Just a Geek now, and I love that because, looking back, I'm getting older, and I'm looking back at my earlier years, my teenage years, my 20s, and even though I look on it fondly in a lot of ways, there's so much I would change. As you grow as a person, there's so much I would change. Yeah. And I'm not sure that it would be an easy journey if I had to go and look really close at it.
It was not easy for me.
Well, that was my question. Is older Will, looking back at younger Will, were you kind? Were you surprised? Was it difficult?
I appreciate that question very much. I eventually found empathy and compassion for the person I was when I existed and wrote everything that's in Just a Geek. When I started this annotation process, I was impatient with myself. I judged myself pretty harshly. There were times where I was embarrassed, it took me a little over 2 years to do the annotation process because it was traumatic and it was painful and it required just like, I had to do a lot of emotional work and like therapy to work through the issues that revisiting these painful moments resurfaced in me. And it was, I don't know, maybe a year or so into the process when something kind of changed in me, and I just sort of forgave myself. And I stopped holding myself, the younger version of myself. Nearly 50-year-old me, try to keep this in line, nearly 50-year-old me decided to stop holding nearly 30-year-old me to the unreasonable standards that our parents had for us. And in the process of forgiving him for that, I was able to grow and heal. I don't forgive them, but I can absolutely kind of begin the forgetting and really do the moving on. And what I saw as I worked through this and revised it a couple of times was really a much clearer picture of who I was then and a very clear picture of who I am now. And what's left is the story of how I got from there to here.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I love the fact that you're so honest in the book, and very amusing, by the way, the little notes at the bottom cracking me up. Some really good stuff in there. Yeah, it's really good.
You know, I have this tendency to be like extremely serious and super intense and like what my friend calls like a dark brooding symphony. And sometimes you just gotta just back off for a minute. And like find some humor. I really credit my editor, David Pomerico at Harper, for really helping me find and lean into those moments. And there were times where I just pitched jokes throughout the entire manuscript. I would just add a little note and say like, I don't know, what do you think? You know, maybe we can do a joke here. And an interesting thing happened. You know, there are places in the text where I felt in the writing of it that this past, we'll say 3 pages, has been intense. And I would find a place in the text to footnote it and maybe like release that pressure a little bit and find some humor in that moment. And it works in the text. What's interesting to me is when I did the audio narration for this, it was a very different experience and an extremely important part of the whole experience for me narrating the book. But as I was reading it and saying all of that out loud and then dropping into these things, they actually felt jarring to me and very out of place. Like, I'm like, you know, this is intense and serious and meaningful. And now here's a fart joke. And like, it's just, it absolutely works in text, but in speaking, it just seems like, dude, you just undercut yourself. Why did you do that? Like, stop heckling yourself.
Well, you had me like you early on, you reference the old drug commercials. You know, I learned it from you.
Yeah.
You know, I grew
very
up
generationally specific reference.
Yes.
Like everyone knows this is your brain on drugs, but it's really only Gen Xers who know I learned it by watching you.
Yeah. Yeah. Classic.
Yeah. And honestly, I think I learned it by watching you is funnier and as memorable as This Is Your Brain on Drugs. The timing of it is almost exactly the same. It's interesting to me that Your Brain on Drugs is the one that got memed and the other one didn't. I'm sure there is a grad student, you know, diving into meme culture to figure out why that is.
I still use, I learned it from, I do that with my wife still. Totally. When the situation comes up, I'm still throwing it out there and she's looking at me like idiot.
Yeah.
But to me, cracking myself up.
Yeah, it's really good to be easily amused, right? One of my like part of Will's guide for life is like find it in yourself to be easily amused, and it's a little tautological, but like when you are easily amused, then everything is amusing to you, and you can take things lighter. I don't mean not taking things seriously. I mean finding the ability to be amused by things. Like you can still take things seriously and still find the humor in moments. That's been a struggle for me, but very much worth the effort.
Yeah, I completely get that. You know, I grew up being overly serious. Mm-hmm. You know, I always worried about what people would think of me, you know, how I came off, how I looked, all that stuff. And as I've gotten older, the joy that I get out of life is directly correlated with poking fun at myself and the nonsense that I get into, that where before I would have been mortified.
Yeah.
If something happened. And just reading the book, I kind of feel like you can relate a little bit to that.
Yeah, you know, there's moments that I think are appropriately shameful. There's some real casual homophobia and some really casual, heartless misogyny in there. And I'm pretty sure that I said in the book, like if someone had sat down and said to me then, this is hurtful and not okay, I would have said, I don't mean any of that. It's just a joke. I didn't get it. I absolutely didn't get it. And the thing that's terrible about that is I should have gotten it, because I spent my entire life being bullied and humiliated and made the butt of jokes. And when I said that's hurtful, this was primarily from my dad. Like, he never apologized. He never expressed compassion or empathy or regret. He said, it's just a joke. Why are you so sensitive? And it's really clear to me that I just carried that forward in my life. And part of breaking the generational trauma that led to my parents being just terrible with me so that I would not be terrible with my boys was seeing that and recognizing it. It was seeing that in myself was really difficult and embarrassing. And I really struggled to find the exact right tone to accept responsibility, atone properly, and use myself as an example to help people move from maybe places of unexamined privilege to places of empathy and compassion.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And, I think, we grew up I'm a couple years older than you. We grew up in the same environment, I think, growing up the time. And thankfully, we're making some strides. So that a lot of that stuff that was just normal, when we were growing up, and the things that we would say, the insults we'd throw at each other and stuff, it really wasn't okay. But none of that ever didn't cross my mind. I know it didn't cross my friend's mind. We would never have intentionally said it to hurt somebody. You just said it because that's what you learned growing up, and coming to the realization that stuff is not okay. People can be hurt by that, and then learning from it so that you don't pass it down, and we kind of break that cycle. So important. And I love the fact that you really go into talking about that.
Thank you. It would be very easy and lazy to just write it all off as a product of the times. That'd be very, very easy to do. I mean, I have seen people do that with, like, I was raised by like John Bircher boomers, and that particular segment of my parents' generation is really terrible. And like, there's a lot of them. They reelected Reagan in a landslide. And when their racist parents would be super racist, it was just written, it was just given a pass. Well, he's from a different time. Well, guess what? I'm from a different time too. And I know that it's not okay. And the thing is, now that when you didn't know, right? When you didn't know, okay, but now you know. And once you know, what are you going to do about it? It's that meme of Principal Skinner going, "Is it me? No, it's the children who are wrong." And I think that it's, and one of the things that I wanted to communicate in the retelling of this story, and in that part of it, I mean, it's a complicated story. It tells a lot of different things about me. Part of this story is just my evolution to being a more empathetic, compassionate person who stopped seeing himself as the main character. And like, a really important part of that is acknowledging these two things. That was not okay. And also, it was never okay. Like, we acted like it was, but it wasn't. I don't know what it's going to be for people who are like, they think they're good people today, right? Like, I don't know how someone could. We all know I'm a cisgendered, heterosexual, upper middle class white dude. Like, this world is built to make my life as easy as possible. And I just know how I just grew up thinking it was entirely okay to just use marginalized people as a punchline. And I see how that so profoundly negatively affects people today. And I will fight with every breath I have to make sure that kids are protected, that kids grow up feeling safe, and able to express exactly who they are in an environment that loves and supports them.
Yeah, it's such a terrific sentiment. Completely agree. And one of my questions to you was, how did that relationship that you had with your parents affect you once you became a parent? And you kind of answered that. You absolutely took those lessons and made sure you didn't pass those on.
I remember one day when my son Nolan was 5 or 6, and he had a temper tantrum. And the temper tantrum, if I can remember it correctly, just sort of grew out of him feeling frustrated. I don't remember what he was frustrated about, but a thing wasn't working for him, and I don't remember what it was. And he got really frustrated. And he expressed his frustration with this sort of temper tantrum. And I reacted the way I was taught was appropriate in those circumstances, which was to just blow it off and not take it seriously. And that made him more upset. And I didn't understand why that was. And we were seeing a family therapist because the kid's biological dad was such a nightmare. And we were trying very hard to like just agree on some really basic kind of parameters so the kids could have some stability in their lives. And I went and talked to the therapist about this, and I said, I feel like I did something wrong, but I don't know what it is. And she said, you've told me how infantilizing and invalidating and upsetting it is to you when your dad doesn't take you seriously and minimizes your feelings. And you did that to Nolan. And I was completely unaware of it. And that was all, it was just someone saying, do you see that you're doing this thing? And that day was the beginning of me really working really hard and really diligently to not do to my kids what he did to me. And at that time, you know, I didn't even admit the truth about everything that had happened to me. I didn't even admit it to myself until I was in my mid-40s. Like, I was really aware of it. I knew all of it. I knew it felt bad. But then I spent most of my 30s just being a drunk to avoid it. And when I stopped drinking in my 40s, I was able to really look at that stuff with really clear, open eyes. I spent an unbelievable amount of time trying to engage my parents in a healing conversation so that we could be a family. And, you know, there just came a point where it was very clear that they weren't willing to accept any responsibility for any of their participation in any of the things that were hurtful for me, or that the pain that I experienced or anything was even valid, or that it was even
right.
real. And it was that also, when I recognized that, I had further conversations with my sons. It seems like every time I have uncovered a piece of myself from my childhood that was deeply traumatized and wounded just by the parental abuse I experienced, when that piece of me gets like worked out and like I sort of think of it as like getting pulled into a hug and made safe.
Right.
It reveals places where that unresolved trauma may have affected the way I, as a father, interacted with my boys when they were growing up. And when I have those memories, I reach out to them and just share with them, I just remembered this, and I don't know if you remember it, but if you want to talk about it. And they're used to this from me now, you know,
Right.
that's just like the first few times it was a lot, but they've gotten used to it. And we've had wonderful, beautiful conversations about it. And my boys and I are extraordinarily close. Like, we have the real family my mom always pretended we had. My mom pretended and lied to the public and created this image of this like loving, close family that did everything together. And like, that's just not what it was. That is 100% what I have with my boys.
Yeah, that's so great.
All four of us, the kids and my wife and me, we worked real hard to earn this and to build this. And we work real hard to nurture it and keep it going. Like, no pressure on my boys at all, but like, I am real excited to have grandkids someday.
Hey, listen, I'm a new granddad.
Excited for that.
I've got four, and the oldest is the oldest isn't even 3 yet, so they're all young.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a pawpaw. I say granddad, but I'm a pawpaw.
Yeah.
It goes in stages. Like, before they can say pawpaw, I'm pop, and then eventually they get to pawpaw. But it's the best. Right. As much as I love being a dad, granddad even better.
I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to support my sons and my daughter-in-law in ways that I was never supported. I'm really looking forward to just being there for them in ways that just nobody
That's
was.
so great.
It's gonna be really cool.
When you made that decision, you worked with your parents. You tried to get to the point that you could move forward together in some capacity. When you made that decision, this isn't going to work, and you had to end that. Was that heartbreaking? Was it freeing? What was that moment like when you made that decision?
It was all of those things. It was incredibly painful. There are people in this world who you can't talk to. You have to write everything down.
Right.
Because when you try to talk to them, they interrupt you and distract you and contradict you and confuse you. And when you write things down, you can say, that's not what I said. It's right here. This is what I said. Stop putting words in my mouth. Stop gaslighting me. So I wrote everything down as kindly and gently and as non-confrontationally as I can. Spent a lot of time working on it. I'm a professional writer. I can use words. and sort of the focal point of it was, I've been trying for a really long time to work this out with both of you, but you're just not hearing me. I feel like my dad doesn't love me. And until we address that, nothing else matters. My mom didn't respond to me for 4 months. My dad didn't respond to me for 6 months. When my dad finally did respond to me, the subject of the email was, your mother wants me to email you. Okay, so let's just back this up real quick and follow this chain of events. Me, I think you don't love me. My dad, I'm going to ignore you for 6 months. And when I finally do acknowledge that you said this, it's going to be a passive aggressive acknowledgement that I don't even want to do this. Your mother is making me.
Right.
The email from my mom was all about her. It was all about her feelings and how hateful I was. That just told me everything I needed to know. Yeah. There's that, I think it's Maya Angelou said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And that's just, it's really painful when those people are your parents. And I've written about this and I've said, not having parents sucks. There is a black hole in my life and in my heart where unconditional love from my parents should be. And that will never be filled. It can be temporarily illuminated by the unconditional love and support I get from the adults from Star Trek who are really my family. It can be temporarily illuminated by the chosen family that I have. But when I wake up in the middle of the night and there's nobody around, and I'm like, and all of my defenses are down, sometimes that's the only thing that I can feel, and it hurts a lot. And it's taken a lot of work and a lot of time to depersonalize it, to understand that it's not about who I am as a person. They don't even know me as a person, and they never did. And like, that sucks for me, but that really sucks for them. Because I'm pretty awesome. And like, there is no reason to not be like, yeah, my son's great. Like, I just think that's, it's a bummer. I know what I have with my boys, and I know what my dad is missing out on. And, maybe he has that with my brother, who's kind of like his golden child. So good for them. But like, it just wasn't ever there for me. And what I eventually concluded was, not having parents really sucks. It hurts a lot, but having my parents hurts even more.
And that's such a shame.
It's the difference between like, here is a wound that is slowly healing, and here is a wound that I'm constantly irritating by jamming stuff into it. And like, eventually I just had to heal the wound.
Yeah, of course. And that was my follow-up question is how has this affected your relationship with your siblings?
My sister and I are extremely close. We always have been, and we still are. Her son is my godson. I adore him, and I adore my sister. We talk all the time. Years ago, my brother and my parents were in a business venture together. They got into some financial trouble, and they wanted me to promote their GoFundMe to my 3 million Twitter followers. Sure. And I said, listen, I love you, and I can't do this because I have my own show, Tabletop, We're crowdfunding it. We've been working on this for months. We
Right.
start the crowdfunding in a couple of weeks. I got to take care of myself, my family, and the 70 people who are relying on me for jobs. I can't do this for you. P.S. It hurts me to feel like the only time you ever talk to me is when you want something.
Right.
You never call to see how I'm doing or just to talk or whatever. And my brother blew up at me, lost his mind, said that I was dead to him and hung up on me. And I haven't talked to him since. For years, our mother tried really hard to like manipulate me and make it my problem that I should go apologize to him. I eventually, and I was when I was just like, okay, I like, fine, I get it. You guys are all on team. I'm the problem. And
Right.
my sister and my sister still has a relationship with them, and good for her. I'm sincerely happy for her. I'm happy for my nephew that he's got a relationship with his grandparents. I sincerely love it. It's good for them. But it's just not anything that I'm part of. But my sister and I are extremely close.
That's great.
And it's been really reassuring, and it's been comforting to have conversations with her about things that I remember that our parents refuse to acknowledge, because she remembers them too. And it's great to have her memories and her perspective to kind of validate and confirm the truth of my lived existence.
Yeah. So, okay. So a little different question, but similar. So when is there a difference from the first book to the redone book with how your fellow Star Trek people, your Stand By Me actors, how they have interacted and kind of responded to the two different books? Or have they treated you different each time? Is I guess what I'm trying to get at.
To the best of my knowledge, nobody from either cast is aware at all of the initial book or any of the books that I had done before then. I just never really talked about it.
Okay.
I don't know if this is interesting to anyone else, but I have written a number of books that I self-published that are just like available independently, kind of from me and from small company shops and things like that. If anyone's interested in that, it's at wilwheatonbooks.com. The only reason I mention that is when I did all of those things, and they're things that I'm very proud of, that I had a wonderful time doing. At that time in my life, I still felt like I don't have the right to reach out to any people who I kind of look up to, because I was kind of believing my dad's version of me. I was believing that I was a failure. I was believing that I was worthless, and that I didn't want to, I just felt like I didn't have the right to share these things with people. I feel differently about this book. And I know Jerry read it. I can't believe he made the time to read it, but I was on the talk and he read all of it. And I was like, come on, you have to say that. And he was like, no, I read it and I really loved it. And it was a great story. And I'm really happy for you. I haven't shared it with my Trek castmates yet, just because I have copies for each of them. I've signed each one specially for each of them. And over the next few months, as we see each other, I will give them out to all of them. I expect that they will be, as they have been with everything that I've done, enthusiastic and celebratory and supportive and proud of me. That's how they always make me feel, and it's really wonderful.
That's so great. That's so great to hear. And I saw some of the comments from Jerry. They were very, very nice, and that was really good of him to say.
Yeah, he's a really good guy. He's a really good, kind, funny, easygoing, thoughtful person. I'm really glad that our lives have stayed connected.
Yeah, I loved the fact that he showed up on Big Bang as Sheldon's older brother. I thought that was just terrific casting. He did such a great.
I'm such a fan of young Sheldon that by the time we shot the wedding, and Jerry was there, and I'm blanking on the name of the actor who plays Missy as an adult, but I was looking at them, and it was so funny. I said to both of them, I'm such a huge fan of Young Sheldon, and I watch it every week, and you're playing the adult versions of these kids that I watch. So in this weird way, there's this construct in my mind where I've been watching you your whole life, even though you're not those kids, you're just actors. And it was really weird, and like, nobody really understood what I was talking about except Steve Morrow, who show runs both shows. He was like, I completely understand what you're talking about.
I love it.
That episode was really, really fun to shoot. Like, the people that I got to share the set with that day. I mean, the D&D game is great. The D&D game is special and awesome and wonderful. But like, come on, man. Mark Hamill and Christine Baranski. Like, are you for real? Like, this is amazing. Like, and yeah, it was incredible.
Yeah, it'd be hard not to geek out a little bit.
Yeah.
Just
every day on the set was that. It's so funny. Like, the other actors, they're people. They could really embrace the nerdy aspects of their characters, and they did the homework to understand what all their nerdy stuff was. They knew what they were talking about, but they're not nerds the way I am. They're not nerds the way Bill Prady and Steve Morrow and the writers are. So like, when we were there, they would say a thing that was a hilarious nerd reference, and they would nail it and have no idea what they were talking about. And meanwhile, all of us who were nerds are like, God damn, that's funny.
Yeah. Which is why most of us love the show.
Yeah.
Because the references and the things that brought up, they struck home.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so great. And it was such a fun show. And all of us were disappointed that it ended. But I mean, it was on for over a decade.
Yeah. I remember talking with Bill about how there were still stories to tell, and that it didn't feel like it was at its end. It felt like there was just life in it. There was more to do. And I honestly think that's the best time to end something.
Yeah, I agree.
I think so too. It is the absolute best time. Think about how we would discuss The Simpsons if it had ended in like season 12.
That's true. Yeah. When they called you, and you talk about it a little bit in the book, but when they called you and they said, they want you on Big Bang to play kind of like a mirror image, evil type of Will, if you will, even though he wasn't that evil, but just a little different than who you are. What was that like? What went through your head? Was that just like, oh, it's a job, or did you kind of grasp, what the show was?
The initial pitch was, will you come play yourself on the Big Bang Theory? And I was like, oh my God, I love the Big Bang Theory and I would love that. But I felt like playing myself was a cheat. I felt like playing myself didn't count. I wanted to play a character.
Yeah.
And I said to Bill, I would love to play a character like Sarah plays Leslie Van Winkle, or like John plays Kripke. Like, I would love to be a character like that. And he said, I completely get it. I absolutely understand. And and he said, I super respect any choice you want to make. And I just want to remind you that you're the only actor in the world who can play Wil Wheaton. And I called another friend of mine who is a writer and a producer and a mentor. And I was like, what do I do? And he was like, you hang this fucking phone up right now and you call Bill Prady back and you say, thank you. Yes. What the fuck is wrong with you? And I was like, okay,
That's good advice.
And I was like, I just wanted to check in to make sure. And he's like, it's the #1 rated sitcom in the world. A rerun of The Big Bang Theory just beat every network show last night. Like, why would you even think about this? And I was like, I don't know. Why are you yelling at me? And he's like, because I can't believe you would even think, like, why are you even thinking about this? And I was like, I'm going to hang up and call Bill back. So I called Bill and I was like, all right, I'll do it. And he says, okay, now that you've said yes, there's a slight wrinkle. I had pitched you on playing yourself, and now we'd actually like you to play kind of like a delightfully evil version of yourself.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I wish you'd said that from the beginning, because that's a character and I'm 1,000% on board with that. I love the idea of playing that character. And I fell right into that guy really easily, and it was really fun. And it was fun being him and seeing how far I could push that trolling, kind of like he was like Wil Wheaton in the first few seasons, his first few seasons of The Big Bang Theory and Sheldon, was just like a cat with a toy,
Oh, yeah.
and he loved it. And when they made the choice to switch the relationship from adversarial to being friends and being part of the group, it it just like opened up this whole world of storytelling. And my favorite episodes of The Big Bang Theory, and I talk about this in Still Just a Geek, are some of the episodes where Morrow asked me specific questions about my lived experience and my career, and would it be cool if they used them in the telling of Wil Wheaton's story to support the characters. And that was really beautiful and deeply meaningful for me, having the opportunity to talk about the frustrations and the kind of inherent unfairness of being an actor, and the uncertainty of those things, and what it is like to be just thrust into the middle of the spotlight for something you didn't ask for.
Right.
Those were deeply meaningful moments for me, and just, I think about it a lot. Like, just The Big Bang Theory was just a gift from start to finish. It was just a beautiful, wonderful gift and a privilege. And the game room I am sitting in now exists largely due to what The Big Bang Theory made possible in my life and career.
Love that. I love that. When I spent years trying to get my father to watch The Big Bang Theory, because he was always complaining there's nothing on TV. I was like, have you watched The Big Bang Theory?
Yeah.
No interest, none. And then it'd been several years, and we were hanging out by the pool. He comes up to me and he said, have you seen this Big Bang Theory?
Did he tell you that he likes it because he finally understands you and your weird friends? That's what I've heard. That's what I have heard from every, like our parents' generation. When people come up to me, when our peers come up and tell me about their parents, they all say, like, my parents love this show. And the thing that they say over and over and over again is like, oh my God, I get it. These nerds are just like you and your weird friends. I totally understand all of it. And I really love that. I think it's really sweet. I love that it's a thing that parents watch it and they're like, I just love my little nerds. So I just think it's really, I love that.
Yeah, it brought back memories. You know, they're like, oh, that's like you and your little friends when you were growing up. So I definitely.
Was it exciting when your dad was like, have you seen this? Or were you like, dude, I've been telling you about this forever?
A little of both. But no clue that I'd ever even mentioned it before.
That's amazing. That will be me with my kids someday. Like someday I'm going to like call up Ryan. And I'm going to be like, have you ever heard of this old anime called One Punch Man? Like, I know it's going to be like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is awesome. You know, when my son and he came to me, he said, Dad, I want to do a podcast. And I was like, let's do it. You know, this was, he was probably, I don't know, sophomore in high school. He's like, I want to do a podcast. None of my friends.
That's so cool, because that's a time in their lives where they like kind of don't want to do stuff with mom and dad. They want to be independent.
That's right.
Like, that's wonderful that you have that relationship that exists between you. That's really cool.
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, I was a comic book owner in the 90s. So I owned stores through the 90s. Yeah. And Marvel went bankrupt. And I was like, it's over. So I got out of the business before he was born. So I always missed that, not having that connection. So when he came to me, wanting to do a podcast just talking about nerdy stuff, I was 100% in. And then since then, he's kind of decided he'd rather do the behind the camera stuff. He'd rather do the editing. He didn't care to be on camera.
That's great.
And I was like, well, I kind of like talking. So it has been absolutely best 5 years I've ever had. Just because of that relationship, not because of everything else.
Your boy's gonna edit this podcast?
Yeah.
That is the coolest thing, man. I love that. That's so cool. My son Ryan and I have collaborated on a couple of writing projects.
It's the best.
And it is, there's the joy of seeing my son take a thing that like I just planted a seed and he nurtured and grew this amazing, magnificent thing. And I just get to sit back and just watch him just build stuff out of it and then play that game. Like, what if we did, what do you think about, here's my pitch, let me hear your pitch. Just that collaborative process is just so incredibly special. I love that you guys are doing this together. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's been amazing. And just the conversations that it has brought up, nerdy, real life, the hanging out together, and just the long periods, just like you said, usually at that age, and he's 22 now,
Yeah.
usually at that age, they're trying to start their own life. They got their own thing going on. So it's so precious just to have that time. I'm so thankful for it. It's been just great.
That's great. And when he chooses to sort of step out and do his own thing, he's always going to have this. You guys are always going to have this. Yeah, we did this thing, and then you went out on your own, and oh God, that's really cool. I'm really happy for both of you.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's so great. So I know we're running out of time. We got to wrap up. So I'm going to hit you with some burning geek questions that I want to ask before we wrap up. All right. So it's the first one. Do you think George Martin is ever going to finish that series?
I think he has to, because the television series just utterly ruined what was amazing about that book series. Like, I can't imagine that George would leave that appalling final season on HBO as the wrap up to this epic that was started forever ago. So I hope that he does. I agree with Neil Gaiman that George Martin owes us nothing, and if he is unable or unwilling to finish it, maybe a Brandon Sanderson to come will pick it up and finish it the way Brandon did with Wheel of Time.
Yeah. Are you a Wheel of Time fan?
I'm not, but I'm a Brandon Sanderson fan.
He's great, right?
I've taken his classes. I met him for half a second a million years ago at a con, and just found him to be like disarmingly kind. Anybody who spends any time with me will know that kindness just goes forever with me. There is nothing more important to me than kindness.
I love that. So when you were watching Game of Thrones, because I started reading the book when it came out, Game of Thrones, when it first came out. So I was so in, and the first season's really good. You could tell Martin they were based on his writing.
Yeah.
But could you like I could tell when it started to take a downturn. The final season was bad.
The instant they outpaced the books, it became undeniably clear that these guys were in over their head, that they didn't have that. There's a thing that happens with actors sometimes. Actors stumble into a perfect audition and they nail a role in the audition, and then they just cannot do it on the set. I've been around this, and it's not great. And I think those guys believed their hype. I think that people who could have said, don't do this, were fired or afraid to speak up, and we see the result. I don't know them personally. I don't know anything about them. I'm speaking only as a fan of the show. Like my opinion should not carry extra weight because I sometimes work on TV, but as a fan of the books and as someone who had been a fan of the TV show, I hate what they did. I think it is terrible. And I think it's very clear that they just couldn't do it. They didn't know how to write it. They didn't understand it. It was lazy network procedural writing. I hated all of it.
Yeah, me too. And I knew you did. That's why I asked the question. You can really tell.
There's a great fan theory that sets up Daenerys burning King's Landing in a great way, right? Like it's over. This fan theory is like, it's over. She won. She doesn't have to do anything at all. Everything's cool. This like reign of death doesn't need to happen. And then one random King's Landing soldier kills a person, an innocent person or something like that. And Dany is just like, fuck these guys. And then it all comes down, right? Because the way it seems, what they did in the thing was like, and now for absolutely no reason at all, here comes the crazy vengeance because she's nuts. And I'm just like,
it came out of nowhere. Yeah. I knew you felt that way. That's why I wanted to ask. Okay, so when you first started playing D&D, what was your edition?
Let me see if I can pull it off the shelf. I have it in here. I just don't remember.
Like, were you a box set?
I was a basic. Where is my basic box? Aha! Wait, I have it. Here it is.
All right, let's see. Is it the red or the silver? Oh,
So this is not my original. This is still in plastic. I actually
yeah.
bought this at a game shop, so it's like a relic that I have
That's
as an artifact. My original, I don't have the box anymore. I only have the rules and the player's guide. I've since replaced my Isle of Dread from the expert set and my Keep on the Borderlands from this set, but this is the edition that I started with. It is the edition that I love. I still love. I was just talking with my friend about this last night. We both are massive fans of 5th edition because we both feel like 5th edition got the math out of the way, got the charts out of the way, got the tables out of the way, and allow the players in Dungeon Master to decide, do we want to tell a story together? Do we want to play a minis game together? Do we want to play Descent with a little bit more story? What do we want to do? And then the system supports whatever it is you want to do like that. So you're not in the math side of your head all the time. You're in like the creative side of your head all the time. And I love that about it. But yeah. Basic rules. That's where I started. There's a story about my Aunt Val giving it to me. It's on my blog somewhere. I don't know where it is. I don't think it made it into this edition of the book. It's in my book, The Happiest Days of Our Lives.
Yeah, I've still got mine. The red edition's the one I remember, but the one that the first one was actually, it was more of a silver cover, kind of a blue and silver cover. Still had Keeping the Borderlands in it, but it came out, a year or two before the red box.
Oh, I don't remember that one. I have since acquired a first printing, the little white box one that Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson did, that they like sold out of the trunk of their car. But I don't have anything between that edition and the basic stuff.
We spent most of the 80s playing second edition.
Yeah, I played second edition until GURPS came along, and GURPS really supported storytelling in a way that second edition did not. And I played GURPS all the way through second edition, third edition. Fourth edition has a great Dungeon Master's Guide, but boy, did they just try to recreate Warcraft on the table. And I felt like it just it's not a game that I liked. Fifth edition is, I think, it's going to be held up as just sort of like, this is when D&D got it right. They found the exact sweet spot for everything.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so I think I know the answer to this, but Neil Gaiman does the foreword for the book. Why did you choose Neil Gaiman?
Because I'm a massive fan.
Yeah.
When Just a Geek was going to be published, the editor I had at the time asked me if there was anyone that I had in mind to write an introduction, a foreword or something. And I mean, I knew Neil a little bit. I started the first Sandman fan club on an online service called Genie in the 80s. And I have every first issue of every Sandman comic in mint condition. I have I have them in mint. I have them in near mint. I have many of them. I'm obsessed. It is the comic book series that fundamentally changed my relationship to comics. It taught me that comics didn't have to be superheroes. It did a lot. It was really meaningful for me. American Gods was extremely important to me. Neverwhere was extremely important to me.
Yeah.
Neil tells me that he started a blog to promote, I think, American Gods, because he had seen my blog and thought that was a great way to communicate with people. So when I asked him, I didn't really appreciate that I should have been more scared about asking him than I was. And when he said yes, I was even more astonished. And when it came time for this edition to come out, my Harper asked me if I would reach out to Neil and ask him to do this. And I thought, I can't do that. Maybe I actually can. So I just sent him an email and said, listen, we're doing an audiobook. It's updated, blah, blah, blah. The publisher wanted me to ask you, and I'll tell you, like, I think it would be unbelievably cool if you did this, but I know that it's an ask. I know that people ask you to do things all the time, no expectations. What do you think? And he replied to me within minutes and and said, send me the PDF. I'll record it here. He's in New Zealand. And he said, he said, you might hear the birds of New Zealand. And I said, well, now that you've said I might hear the birds of New Zealand, I absolutely must hear the birds of New Zealand. So please ensure that the birds of New Zealand are in your narration. I went to, someone asked me where they could get it. So I just went to grab the Audible link to give it to them. And it says, Still Just a Geek, narrator Wil Wheaton, narrator Neil Gaiman, and that we're credited on something together is an insanely big deal for me. I'm like, yo, 14-year-old Will, you are never going to believe this.
That's great. That's great. Well, so the book is Still Just a Geek. Thank you so much, Will, for taking the time today.
It was such a pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah, me too. Me too. So as you're leaving or before you go, where can we find the book? Where can we find you on social media?
Okay, Still Just a Geek is available everywhere books are sold. You can get it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, all those places. There is an audio version that I narrated myself that has material that is not in the print version. As I read the audio version and narrated it, memories came up in the saying of things out loud that didn't come up in the writing of things. And when those memories happened, I just kind of talked about them extemporaneously for a moment. And we turned a lot of that into like audio footnotes. So there's a little bit of extra stuff in there that I'm hoping we can maybe get turned into printed footnotes in a future publication of the book if we do future printings of the book.
Yeah.
So people will ask me, where do you want me to get it? And the answer to that is wherever is easiest for you. They gave me a wonderful advance, and it is highly unlikely I will ever earn it out, so I don't care. But I will say this, if you do have the opportunity to purchase from an independent bookseller, independent booksellers always need our support no matter what. And if you order from an independent bookseller, there's like a 9 in 10 chance that you can get yourself a signed copy at no additional charge. I signed like 2,000 for independent booksellers.
That's a lot.
Just look online, right? You can find it anywhere. Just search for Still Just a Geek and you can find the way you want to get it. For me, my primary home online is at wilwheaton.net. And the two social networks that I use with any regularity are Instagram and Facebook. And in both places, I am It's Wil Wheaton.
Oh, easy enough. Easy enough.
Very easy.
Thank you so much, Will. Hold on one second. Well, I hope I held it together pretty well. I'm such a fan of Will's. I've been watching him pre-Star Trek, when he was voicing for The Secret of Nim. He had did some smaller things before he got the Stand By Me role, and then went to Star Trek, and I've been watching him ever since. I love Toy Soldiers. I thought that movie was awesome. When I was watching it, that was one that was on the rotation. I just had a blast. And then when he showed up on Big Bang, he's so funny. He's so good. And I love the fact that he's so open about, the mistakes that he's made in his life, how he's trying to grow as a person and just become a better version of himself, which is something that we all should be doing. How he's taken the lessons and the difficulties from growing up and made sure to put a positive spin with his own family, his own sons. Just absolutely terrific. So I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. I'm going to run through a few of the things that there was no way I was going to get to them today, but I'm going to mention some things that that me and the family have loved him in through the years. So let me just run down the list, and I'll start with the fact that on Teen Titans, the beloved animated series, not Teen Titans Go, which he's also voiced for, but the original Teen Titans, when my kids were younger, that was one that we watched together. He voiced Aqualad. So wanted to mention that because that show has special meaning to me because I got to watch that with the kids. He made an appearance on The Last Starfighter. Yeah, I'm not even sure he was credited, But as you know, we've had Mary Catherine Stewart and Lance Guest both have been on the program. So I rewatched Starfighter before they came on. And that reminded me that Will had made an appearance on that. So I wanted to bring that up. And then my daughter, who is not geeky, and she doesn't watch the geeky stuff or the nerdy stuff. For some reason, she really loved Eureka. And he had a several episode arc on Eureka. So wanted to mention that one as well. Just a terrific guy. Sometimes I think he's a little hard on himself. I think as fans, we absolutely love Wil Wheaton. So I'm just so thrilled to get a chance to talk to him. I wanted to ask him about what it was like being memed. He has been in memes, positive and negative, throughout the years, as everybody in Star Trek has. And I was curious, what that was like. Was that a good experience? Was that a difficult experience? What that was like. So if we get a chance to have him back on, I'll definitely bring that one up. Could really use your guys' help. If you haven't done so yet, we're trying to get bigger and better. We talked a little bit on podcasts, me and my son, Brett, we've been at this for several years. We're trying to grow it into something special. It's already special to me and him, but something bigger. And at the moment, we're trying to work on our YouTube channel. So it's MeisterCon Pod on YouTube. If you could subscribe, we would really appreciate it. We are closing in on 400 episodes, which for a podcast is pretty good. The majority of those are interviews, and we have had absolutely just a fabulous run of guests. I guarantee you'll find somebody you like, so check that out. MeisterCon Pod on YouTube. You can find all of those episodes, audio and video, on our website, meistercon.com. If we're doing anything in studio, if we're going on location, if we're covering a convention, all that will be on the website, meistercon.com. And Brett, we talked a lot about Will and his blog. Brett writes a blog at meistercon.com that is, I think Brett is so talented as a writer, and it's funny and it's geeky. You can check that out on there as well. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate that you choose us week after week. There's a zillion podcasts out there. You keep coming back. We don't take that for granted. Thank you. Until next time. Bye, everybody.